Hi everyone, this is the second part of the video about love relationships. So if you haven't already, I would suggest that you watch the first part of the video before this one. And the second part will be about so-called spiritual relationships such as twin flames, soulmates and twin souls. So I'm going to start off with the twin flames because I know this is a subject that so many people are interested in. There's a lot of information circulating on twin flames out there, especially on the net. There are a lot of fantasies, there are a lot of misinformation concerning twin flames. So I'm gonna try to clarify a bit all of that. There is this human aspect within ourselves that aspires for this ultimate love. This love in its purest, most beautiful form. That would be the incarnated twin flame love. Almost like a divine love, but incarnated on earth. But I'm sorry to say that this is basically just a fantasy, a human fantasy. And I'm sorry if I break down any myths concerning twin flames, but this is not what the twin flame relationship is about. So, twin flames are still a mystery really, because we don't know so much about twin flames. It is said that twin flames are the same soul split into one embodying the masculine aspect and the other the feminine aspect. So it would be a man or woman, or in the case of a homosexual couple, one embodies the male polarity and the other the feminine polarity. I personally don't know if we have only one twin flame, because if we consider that our souls are extensions from our oversoul, which is an extension from Source, then I don't see why we shouldn't have many more extensions of our soul. So it's a possibility, because the universe works very much like a Russian doll, only it doesn't have any limitation. So twin flames are soul contracts, very specific soul contracts. Sometimes they are karmic. Most of the time what happens is that one twin flame will incarnate and the other will stay in the spiritual world. So it is pretty rare actually to find two incarnated twin flames. Some say it's about 1 to 3% of the population. And so these are souls that come together for very specific purposes. Symbolically, on a purely spiritual level, it is this famous alchemical couple, we might say. It is Osiris and Isis, it is Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, it is the feminine and the masculine coming and merging together as one and embodying this sacred balance between the yin and the yang that merges together and become one and represent unity and wholeness. In practice, we are not all Osiris and Isis. If I had to make a comparison, I would say that the twin flame relationship is actually, for those of you who know astrology, is like the Plutonic type relationship. So it's intense, it's deep, it's consuming, it's very transformative, but the other is going to pull us right down to the abyss of hell. And so it's a pretty demanding and intense relationship. And because it's the same soul incarnated in two different polarities, these people are in opposition about everything, but at the same time they are complementary. So it's the type of relationship where you can say, I cannot live with this person, but I cannot live without this person either. And very often, because it is so intense, we can often see that one of the two partners, usually the male one, will actually run away because it's so intense. And the other partner will chase the runner. So we call that person the twin flame runner and the other the chaser. And sometimes the runner will come back, but sometimes he won't. Twin flames come together for one main reason. There is no other relationship that allows such a rapid and radical transformation of the self, of the ego, and therefore such a rapid expansion of the soul. But this comes with a price, because this relationship is very demanding. The partner will basically put our head into a bucket for us to face our worst nightmares, our worst demons, and both partners will constantly mirror each other all the deepest, darkest childhood wounds and traumas for them to be healed, but it's very painful. But the positive outcome is that this leads to a complete overhaul of the ego structure and sometimes its dissolution. So this can also be the case in a classic relationship, of course, but really the most important thing to remember about a twin flame relationship is that it's very concentrated, it's very intense, and so in a very short time period, like for example in 3 years, we can be completely transformed. And sometimes something that may take a whole lifetime to achieve, or even many lives with many partners, we achieve it in a very, very specific time frame. So there is very much this love-hate aspect in this relationship, and both partners can be really like magnets, because they can attract each other like magnets and they can repel each other like magnets too. And this is even true in their sex life, because there are phases where they will really come together in symbiosis and almost live something like a transcendental mystical experience, or they will push away each other and not have sex at all. So it's quite hard to navigate with that. And the other thing that twin flames do is that prior to incarnating, they actually have an agreement to work through these patterns on themselves, and by working these patterns within themselves, they are transmuting it for the collective. So of course you will say everyone does that, everyone works for the collective, so that is true, but it is really one of the main reasons and the main points that twin flames agree to meet each other in one lifetime. It's really to specifically work for the collective, and this can be really felt as if the two partners are constantly working on each other, and it can be sometimes a bit draining. We can sometimes see this narcissistic codependent dynamic going on within a twin flame relationship, or the codependent with an addict partner relationship, but not all of these kinds of relationships are twin flame relationships. So most of the time, twin flame relationships are not relationships on the long term, because most of the time a twin flame will enter our life for us to face our demons, our deepest demons, and once the lesson is learned, then they move on and we move on. Unless at one point they harmonize with each other and it becomes a much more harmonious and balanced relationship, and so it becomes more like a soulmate relationship. But that's quite rare actually. And there is this quality of love that is inside a twin flame relationship that is indescribable. It's beyond physical reality, because physical reality at this point really looks like a battlefield, a constant battlefield at home. It's the war, a constant war, but nevertheless they can't leave each other. Twin flames cannot leave each other. They are bonded together by this sacred divine love that they can't even explain, and so that is why it's also so complicated and so painful sometimes. And it does happen that if the two partners at one point master themselves and they become self-realized and maybe they reach enlightenment, then they become this famous alchemical couple that we fantasize so much about. So I'm going to speak about soulmates now. A soulmate can be a friend, it can be a lover, it can be a sibling, it can be parents, it can be any other member of the family, but I'm going to focus on soulmates in a love relationship here. So soulmates recognize each other instantly. There is this very strong physical attraction to begin with, and the moment they start speaking to each other, they instantly feel that they are connected, that it's very fluid, there's a very fluid communication, it's very easy. They can feel that they are very similar, so not like twin flames who are very opposed. They are very similar, they have similar tastes, similar desires, similar interests, similar goals in life in general, which is very positive for their mutual understanding and sharing of emotions and bonding. On a sexual level, it can also be very powerful because they are so similar and on the same wavelength and share the same kind of energies. They can feel into each other. They can really feel how to meet the other's needs, and they can really merge together as one in the sexual experience, which can be a very beautiful and spiritual experience as well. But all of this doesn't mean that there are no challenges within a soulmate relationship, because we are still in this magnifying mirror dynamic, and so we will see the flaws of the other getting bigger and bigger, and sometimes it will unravel certain wounds. It can be karmic wounds, such as an impossible love or loss or abandonment or whatever. But because these two beings are really on the same wavelength and they understand each other and they are harmonized with each other, it will be much easier to solve all these problems than it is for a twin flame relationship, for example, where there is much more conflict. So because they can feel into each other and there is this affection, compassion and warmth to the relationship, this can guarantee actually a certain longevity in the relationship. Some say that to live a true soulmate relationship, we must be spiritually mature and we must have found a certain resolution inside of ourselves and worked enough on our personal transformation. I think this is quite true, but I do see a lot of young soulmates getting together, and in those cases then the relationship might be shorter or it's less exclusive. But anyhow, a soulmate relationship is really a relationship where the two merge as one, and it's very much filled with a lot of affection, a lot of warmth, a lot of compassion for each other, and where basically the two partners evolve through life and have the same goals. So this is really important if you want to have a long-term relationship. So I'm going to talk about twin souls now. There's not much information about twin souls out there, and they're not very well known. But twin souls are two souls that come from the same egg, so like real twins in a way. They are very similar to soulmates on certain aspects. They are very similar, they are inseparable, they share a lot of common things together, and a bit like twin flames, but without the conflict aspect, because they are not two opposed polarities. So they can incarnate in the same sex or the opposite in two different sexes. Like twin flames, very often we see that the twin soul one twin soul will stay in the spiritual world and the other will incarnate. And this is actually my case, because I found out a couple of years ago that one of my guides is a twin soul, and that we actually shared an incarnation where we were actual twins. So she decided to stay in the spiritual world to guide me in the physical world, and it's almost like she's living this incarnation that I'm having through me, but with a different perception, because she has a more global perception, whereas I have a more closed perception in the physical reality. So in the case that the two twin souls are incarnated, I have seen some that unite together, and it's actually very beautiful to watch, because these are two people who are in complete symbiosis. They are always together, they like to do everything together, they never get bored with each other. They rarely fight, almost never fight. They are completely similar on very different aspects, and sometimes they even physically look like each other, so it's pretty incredible. In all the types of relationships that I've mentioned, I think it's really important not to get too caught up into labels, because it's interesting to listen to these descriptions and it helps us to understand the dynamics within our relationships. But the most important thing at the end of the day in a love relationship is love. And most importantly, it's self-love. Because if we seek in the other someone to fill up our inner void, then it's a recipe for disaster. Actually, the other serves as a mirror for us to seek and see within ourselves all the parts that we don't love, and it actually serves us to learn how to love ourselves. So it's really the purpose of relationships is that we cannot truly love someone if we don't love ourselves first. And once we do, once we love ourselves, once we made peace with our shadows, then we can set healthy boundaries, then we can meet each other's needs, then we can have a really gratifying and beautiful relationship. And finally, you need to respect yourself. If you are currently in an abusive relationship, may it be physically, verbally, emotionally, psychologically, if there is violence, if there is humiliation, if you feel miserable in this relationship, whether it's a twin flame relationship or not, we don't care. We don't stay in an abusive relationship just because it's a mirror and I need to work on my stuff. No. Sometimes the mirror is just there to tell us, get the hell out of here and move on. Sat Nam.